What's going on, guys? Today we're going to be doing a kill count for the final season of Attack on Titan. As the title suggests, we'll be going through each episode from the first half of the final season and estimating how many people were straight up killed by Eren or whoever else it may be. By this point, Attack on Titan is pretty notorious for the amount of people who seem to die every season, so we will reach a fairly high number by the end of this video, but remember that these are all still rough estimations. Along the way, I'll likely be rounding the numbers up if I'm unsure how many people died, but other than that, it will be as accurate as it can be. Before we begin, be sure to smash that sub button for more content like this, and drop a like as I do really appreciate it. Okay, so starting with episode 1, this dropped us straight in the middle of a war zone where Eldian soldiers were getting destroyed left and right. We had around 10 casualties that we saw in between Falco waking up and Colt dragging him to the trenches, and the Grush brothers were lucky to survive considering what happened to the guys next to them. In total, there were still 800 soldiers remaining at this point, and if it hadn't been for Gabby's quick thinking, then a lot more of them would have been added to the kill count. By doing what she did with these hand grenades, one enemy soldier was taken out, while the other was finished off by Porco's Jaw Titan. That, however, did not stop the losses completely, since I reckon about 200 soldiers were wiped out during their charge against these machine guns. In this charge, the Allied forces did lose a few people themselves, but it was nothing compared to when it started raining Titans. Once Zeke did his thing, a lot of them were crushed immediately, and many of them that survived were eaten just as fast. It should be mentioned that at least half the Titans didn't survive this fall, and I will add that to the kill count because they are technically still real human beings. Anyhow, the remaining Titans were gradually destroyed by cannons, but the Armor Titan avenged their deaths by going on a rampage of his own. By the time he and Galliard were done, there must have been only a handful of lucky survivors within Fort Slava, as the rest were either crushed or turned into Titan food. Episode 1 ended with the arrival of the Beast Titan, who only added to the misery of the Allied forces by destroying their entire fleet. Destroying those ships was the whole purpose of capturing Fort Slava, and in doing so, Marley had won the war after 4 years. Moving over to episode 2 of the final season, there was only one death which occurred not long after the battle itself. Once they all got back to Liberio, many Eldian soldiers were completely traumatized, while others were plotting how to blow the place sky high. One of the Eldians with PTSD jumped off his roof that same night, followed by a crowd gathered around his body the next morning. This death was never in the source material, so the anime went a bit further in showing us just how much Eldian soldiers were suffering. Episode 3 picked up the pace in a big way, beginning with the brutal assassination of this grasshopper who was just minding his business until Annie came along. She continued the carnage by wiping out a tower full of soldiers once she inherited the female Titan, and this was all part of a flashback to Marley's invasion of another country. All the other warriors were also involved in some way, as Zeke's pitching assault came in handy, and Marcel did a fair bit of damage himself. It should be no surprise that Bertolt had the highest body count of this particular episode, given that his Colossal obliterated an entire military base. The next person to die was Marcel after being eaten by Ymir's Jaw Titan, and this scene gave us a perspective on why he felt the need to save Reiner. The Colossal Titan then smashed in Walmaria, but I'm not going to count these deaths because it is effectively Season 1 animation that we're looking at. A death I will acknowledge though is the man who offed himself after telling the warriors his story, and Reiner was a couple seconds away from following in his footsteps. If it wasn't for Falco hitting the wall at the end of this episode, then the Vice Captain would likely have been added to that number in the corner. Episode 4 was one of very few to have no deaths whatsoever. I mean, the closest we got was Porco nearly having a heart attack, but beyond that, there was nothing new. Yeaeger did have a very brief flashback about his daughter, but that doesn't really count because we already had the full context around her death, and we don't even really see her in this flashback. The Declaration of War was episode 5, and although Eren got a mountain of kills here, it all came in the last 30 seconds of the runtime. His first victims were the innocent Eldians who lived in the housing behind the main stage, and if you look at the remains, I'm gonna say there was something like 50 to 100 people living here. Lara Tiber was the highest profile casualty, but unlike the others, Eren actually took the time to eat his remains. This was an attempt to inherit the Warhammer Titan's power, however on this occasion he ate the wrong Tiber sibling. The kill count increased in the following episode, when we had several bystanders like Zofia who were crushed by rocks, and others like Udo who died in the stampede. The Attack Titan then body slammed the leaders of Marley's military, which was easily over 100 people, before repeatedly punching that spot to ensure no one survived. In a strange way, Eren was angry at them for what they forced Eldian soldiers to go through, yet he himself similarly is okay with killing Eldians to fulfill his own goals. Lara Tiber was the next victim of his merciless beatdown, and their fight had significant collateral damage. When she stabbed the Attack Titan, it sent tons of debris flying into the air, killing the local drunk in the process, and I'm sure many other innocent civilians. For the rest of this particular episode, it was the Marlyean soldiers who suffered the most, as they were taken out by thunder spears, grenades, and even ODM gear. In this scene, we had multiple vehicles carrying soldiers, only for them all to be blown apart a second later. The two guards that Gabby liked were both shot from the rooftop by Sasha, while Gabby herself was completely spared. It's worth noting the reason there are so many soldiers is because Commander Magath ordered 30,000 to head towards Liberio. Many soldiers were arriving as part of a naval fleet, which appeared to have at least 11 ships at the time. If we're generous and assume that there are more ships than just this, and that each ship has 300 soldiers, then roughly there should be at least 5,000 troops at the port. That info will be relevant soon, but the thing we should focus on for now is that only 6 scouts died in episode 7. Those kills came from the Jaw Titan, Panzer unit, and Commander Magath himself, and if we consider that the scouts' plan was for these 2 shifters to be trapped underground, it's almost a miracle that only 6 soldiers died after their unexpected escape. The anime then switches over to the port, where the thousands of Marlyean troops that I spoke about begin to arrive. Armin disguised himself among the ships, and once he was ready, he unleashed the single biggest kill for this half of the season. His colossal explosion was likely the biggest one he could produce, as it sent warships flying into the sky. This turned the surrounding area into a barren wasteland, and I'd estimate 15,000 people were wiped out, either by the actual blast or from the flying debris. Of course, that's just my personal guess, so let me know down below what you think Armin's body count might be. In terms of dying, the Panzer unit were the next to go, with Sasha ending one of them with a rifle, while the others got thunder speared alongside the Cart Titan itself. The final kill of this episode was by far the most valuable, given that Eren broke Lara Tiber out of her crystal and consumed the Warhammer Titan. Up till then, the crystals seemed indestructible, but Porco inadvertently showed everyone that it could be damaged by the Jaw Titan. In episode 8, we got 2 additional deaths for the Survey Corps, both of which were directly caused by Gabby. Her initial kill was Commander Lobov, who was a guy that transferred from the garrison to the scouts, and he actually had the chance to shoot her, but hesitated due to her age. After killing him, Gabby used his ODM gear to travel onto the airship, and we all know what happens after that. Just like the commander, Sasha previously underestimated what Gabby could do, which enabled the warrior candidate to pick up a weapon and begin her killing spree. As a character we've known from the early days, the death of Sasha was the most hard-hitting and one of the few times that Hobo Eren showed emotion. Moving on to episode 9, the only person who died was an officer in the Marlyean army, as he was assassinated by Yelena. She did this on orders from Zeke, and after that moment she was the main middleman between the people from Paradis and the Marlyean volunteers. The next episode had a total of 0 deaths, but we still got some iconic moments, including this exchange about who should inherit the Attack Titan, and the reveal of Historia's pregnancy. Episode 11 also didn't have many casualties, with the only fatality being this soldier who Gabby smashed with a brick. Gabby lured him into the cell by pretending she was having a seizure, making this the 4th time she had killed a person who had shown some level of concern for her safety. Episode 12 had a minimum of 4 kills after the Yeagerist planted an explosive inside Zachary's torture device. The resulting blast took out Zachary himself, who was the head of all 3 military branches, and it also eliminated these 3 members of the military police. Those 3 MPs were candidates to inherit the Founding Titan from Eren, which is exactly why the Yeagerists wanted to get rid of them. If we're being technical, there were still a few more deaths if you count the brief flashback where Onyankopon exposed Yelena's past, but we didn't really know those characters, but I'll include them anyway. The 13th episode of the season was another with 0 casualties, with the closest death coming when Gabby nearly got stabbed if it wasn't for Mikasa. In the following episode, Zeke turned 30 soldiers into abnormal titans with his scream, and a situation like this would kill anyone who wasn't superhuman. 29 of the titans were killed by the captain himself, while the final one was torn apart by the Beast Titan as he used its body parts in place of the rocks he would normally have. Amazingly though, that final titan is not added to the kill count because it did somehow survive. In episode 16 it reappeared to shove Zeke inside its stomach, but since this is a spoiler-free video, I won't go into details of whether he or Levi survived the Thunder Spear explosion. In terms of the remaining deaths for the first half of the final season, there were still quite a few in the last episode. Grimes was a Marlyean volunteer who betrayed Niccolo's trust by calling the Yeagerists, and in doing so Yelena gave him a more powerful position. That promotion would not last long though, as after he insulted Sasha's memory one too many times, Yelena killed him without hesitation. The final casualties were this room full of soldiers, which I estimate to be around 20 to 30 people. Porco had managed to blend in with these guys, but once he did this, pretty much all of them would have died. The Titan transformation itself would have wiped out those standing next to him, and the falling bricks would have likely taken care of the rest. With that said, we have now completed the kill count for now, but something tells me the second half of the season might just beat this number by a little bit. I mean, who knows? If you enjoyed this video, then please drop a like and hit that sub button as well so you don't miss my new uploads. Until the next one, peace out.